Brian and Jackie discussed the future of Pelicans disgruntled star Anthony Davis with new GM David Griffin at the helm. Listen to that.
Will David Griffin even want to trade? Look, we know he doesn't even want to trade Anthony Davis. Can he convince him to stay there? I don't believe that. But Griff's a very personable, persuasive guy. We have been told, I think, through channels, most of us have heard this same scuttlebutt, that, Gail Benson has basically told him, to the Lakers over my dead body.
Over my dead body is what Pelicans owner Gail Benson told WDSU, actually, that those reports are untrue. But that's what Jackie Mack says, Stephen A., that Benson's not going to trade AD to the Lakers of all teams. In your opinion, what does this mean on a couple of fronts here? Lakers, how much trouble would they be in when they maybe sign a big-name free agent, as well as potentially trading for a star player?
Personally, I think it warrants an investigation because whatever happened to good business. The reality is, if you remember, before he abruptly resigned as president of basketball operations for the Los Angeles Lakers, Magic Johnson was very public about the fact that he didn't feel, as an organization, they had negotiated in good faith. He looked at what he offered. He offered Kuzma. He offered Ingram. He offered Lonzo Ball. Now they've got the #4 overall pick. If you end up having that as the best deal on the table, why wouldn't you make the deal? I'm not saying they should feel compelled to help the Lakers by any stretch of the imagination, but it's one thing to sit up there and say that deal doesn't work for us. It's another thing entirely to follow the mantra, we're not doing business under any circumstances with a particular organization because we don't like them. Something like that is not good for the league, and that's the kind of thing that I think that should involve league intervention, if indeed that is the case, which I sincerely doubt now that David Griffin is there. He's a quality GM. Alvin Gentry's a quality coach. They're class personified. They're professionals. They know basketball, and they're going to make the deals that are in the best interest of the New Orleans Pelicans organization. And I think that they'd be able to compel Mrs. Benson to do the same.
I want to reiterate that Mrs. Benson did deny that report. And by the way, Stephen A., thank you. Ramona Shelburne reporting, Lakers have announced they will not hire a replacement for Magic Johnson, their former president of basketball operations, who stepped down abruptly last month. And I know Magic is joining Stephen A. and company on First Take Monday, 10 Eastern here on ESPN.
The other big story of the day, 4 pressing questions heading into Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Of course, it all starts with the 2 best players in the East. Question number 1, will the Greek Freak get the same support tonight that he had in Game 1? Giannis's teammates, they stepped up. Brook Lopez had 29 points in Game 1. That's more than he scored in the entire 5-game series against the Celtics in round number 2. Question number 2, will Kawhi rebound from his subpar fourth quarter? He had 29 points through 3 quarters, but faded down the stretch. 0 for 3 from the floor with just 2 points in the decisive final period. Question number 3, will the Raptors get the same Kyle Lowry they had on Wednesday night? He had 30 points in Game 1, 21 of those in the second half. In the first 2 series this postseason, he had scored a total of 9 points in Game 1s. Question number 4, is this series over for the Raptors if they can't pull out a win tonight in Milwaukee? The Raptors have never come back from a 2-0 series deficit. Toronto head coach Nick Nurse asked about playoff narratives.
In the Game 1 loss to Orlando, I didn't play everybody enough. In the Game 1 loss to Milwaukee, I played everybody too much. So basically, when you lose, nobody's ever happy. And either are we. The narratives are narratives, and to me, they're just a bunch of pile of words.
Same mindset, nothing different. Just go in and try to execute our plays and be good on defense.
It's hard to win 2 games in a row, especially in the playoffs, especially when a team felt like they let one slip away. So, I feel like we're going to get a better shot from them, so we have to bring on our end to be better.
The Bucks are saying all the right things. Stephen A. Smith joining us live from Milwaukee before Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Stephen A., so the Bucks outscore the Raptors by 15 points in the fourth quarter in Game 1. What did Milwaukee show you on Wednesday night?
Well, they showed me that they can take almost an entire team out outside of Kawhi Leonard. I know that's not saying the same thing as Kyle Lowry dropping 30 points, but who foresaw that coming, considering the struggles that he's had in this postseason career? But the reality is Pascal Siakam didn't do much. Marc Gasol didn't do much. Danny Green didn't do much. Their bench didn't do much. When you consider the fact that Malcolm Brogdon outscored the Toronto Raptors' entire bench, then you know something happened effectively on the defensive side of the ball. Milwaukee has height. They can block shots. Evan evidenced by Brook Lopez, 4 blocks, not to mention the fact they can hit perimeter shots. All of these things contributed to their success. But in the end, when Kawhi Leonard is penetrating into the seams and trying to attack their defense in the interior, you've got some tall dudes in there, in Mirotić, Brook Lopez, and of course the Greek Freak.
Yeah, we saw Giannis coming in, all smiles right there. They were so tough. So on the other side, what's at stake here in Game 2 for the Raptors tonight?
To me, everything, this series. I think if they lose this game, I don't think this series goes past five games, because I could see Milwaukee going to Canada and at least stealing one of those 2 games, and then they come back here and they close them out. So I think it's incredibly pivotal for the Toronto Raptors to figure out a way on how to beat Milwaukee. Remember, they lost to Milwaukee despite the fact that Kawhi Leonard had 31, Kyle Lowry had 30, and the Milwaukee Bucks shot 25% from three-point range, 11 of 44. Do you really think that's going to happen in Game 2? Do you really think you're going to get an 0-4 from George Hill, minimal points, not even double digits from Eric Bledsoe? That kind of stuff is not going to happen. And you know the Greek Freak, who had 24 and 14, but was relatively quiet offensively, you know that's not going to be the case in Game 2 after working off that rust in Game 1. So they're going to have to figure it out, because it's going to be a huge challenge. They go down 0-2. I don't see Toronto beating them 4 times in 5 games. Series is basically over.
Scary thought for Toronto. Stephen A. is going to come back later in the show to discuss how the Warriors look without Kevin Durant. Also, much more on Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Stephen A. to explain what Kawhi must do to rebound from Game 1's fourth quarter letdown.
Trying to go up 2-love on the Toronto Raptors tonight. You see about 2 hours till tip-off here over on TNT, ESPN Radio. By the way, 27.1 points per game, the 4th highest average among remaining players this postseason. KD, Kawhi, Damian Lillard are just ahead of Giannis, but take a look at this. When you look back at Game 1, the Bucks really dominated the Raptors. In that 4th quarter, they outscored them 32-17. But it was the final 3.5 minutes that sealed the deal for Milwaukee, because from that point on, the Raptors missed their last 8 shots of the game, getting outscored by the Bucks 10-0. So what is Toronto's focus tonight? Kawhi Leonard actually has that answer. Here's Michelle Steele.
Kawhi Leonard knows what needs to be done to steal Game 2 in Milwaukee and head back to Toronto to defend the North.
Try to get in our offense a little bit better, try to find an open shot, open man, and just try to knock him down. Just go in and try to win, that's it. Same mindset, nothing different.
His mindset might not change tonight, but Kawhi needs to get some better shots, only connecting on 38.5% of his shots from the field and 20% from 3 Wednesday night, a steep decline from his postseason averages prior to Game 1.
All points in this half have been scored by 3 players. Who's next to step up off that bench?
Then there's the fatigue factor. Kawhi was one of 4 Raptors players who played 40 minutes or more Wednesday night and is averaging over 37 minutes a game in the postseason, a career record. Nick Nurse today sounding like he won't be managing minutes the same way he did Game 1.
I would imagine it'll be different. I thought we'd let them push us around just a bit. We'll do our best to manage it the best that we can so that our players have a chance to win the ballgame.
Kawhi Leonard spoke at shoot-around today with his phone playing music in the background, making it a bit harder for reporters to hear the normally soft-spoken player. The Raptors will need to hear from Kawhi tonight and create better shots for their All-Star if they want to even up this series. In Milwaukee, I'm Michelle Steele, ESPN.
All right, thank you, Michelle. Meantime, the Stephen A. Smith Show continues here on SportsCenter. Good to see you back here, Stephen A. All right, Game 1, good and bad for Kawhi. His 8th 30-point game of this postseason, but he had 0 field goals in that 4th quarter. What's the biggest change you need to see from him and the rest of the team?
Well, listen, I think that this is the thing. He can't go a 4th quarter with just 2 points and 0 field goals in the 4th quarter. That simply cannot happen. He's got to be more aggressive, and they're going to have to look for somebody other than Kyle Lowry to produce. You can't expect Kyle Lowry to drop 30 points yet again. That's simply not going to happen against this Milwaukee Bucks squad. I think a key is Pascal Siakam, my most improved player, stepping up. All season long, he was your secondary offensive option. He went the last 3 quarters with just 6 points total. That can't happen. And defensively, you can't have Marc Gasol trying to guard Brook Lopez out on the perimeter, going from helping to double and helping to stymie penetration into the paint and then racing out to try and defend a three-point shot by Brook Lopez. You cannot do that. The person more suitable for that role would be Serge Ibaka. So you got to give him more than 17 minutes. You're going to have to make him a more active participant on the defensive end of the floor with the assignment that you give him. If those two things happen and Kawhi Leonard is a monster in the fourth quarter, they've got a chance to win this game. But it's a lot to ask.
How about this, Stephen A? You mentioned Ibaka. Raptors are 8-1 when he scores more than 5 points this postseason. He only had 4 in Game 1, and they lost. Keep an eye on that tonight as tip-off gets set for 8:30 Eastern. Big news out of the league, though, as Pacers guard Tyreke Evans has been dismissed for violating the anti-drug policy. Stephen A. has got to wait 2 years to apply for reinstatement, something we do not see very often in the NBA. What's your reaction?
Well, my reaction is that evidently he did something to deserve it. You're talking to the wrong man if you expect sympathy for drug use. The fact of the matter is the NFL, the NBA, everybody is clear about what their policies are. And we've got too many of these athletes that have the mindset we should be allowed to do what we want to do to some degree anyway, as long as we show up to work and perform. Well, guess what? When you have your hand extended for other people's money, you don't get to make your own rules. You have to follow the rules and regulations and the stipulations accorded to you by virtue of the contract that you signed. And if you're not adult and disciplined enough to make sure that you do that, then guess what? You have to suffer the consequences. I don't know the specific details. Please don't get me wrong. I don't know if there's an addiction involved or anything like that. But the bottom line is the rules are the rules. And if you don't follow them, you have to suffer the consequences. That's the message that the NBA is sending. They're sending it not just because of themselves and their own standard, but because the public out there that patronizes your product and your brand demands a certain level of discipline and behavior on the part of the professional athletes. If you don't like it, go someplace else and make considerably less money. That's the bottom line.
He's coming off a pretty decent season for those Indiana Pacers, set to become an unrestricted free agent this summer, and now we won't see him back for at least 2 years, if at all. Stephen A. Smith, live from Milwaukee. Thank you.